Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Square Feet on Vishwahini again on another week. Like every other week, we are going to talk about another interesting development, uh, the investment opportunity in regional Victoria, Geelong today. Even though we say it's regional Victoria, it's now getting closer to CBD. And to talk about this great development, we have today in the studio Ben Stewart from Worrell Estate. Welcome to the
Sanjay
program, Ben.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for the invitation.
It's a great to have you on the program. And Ben, the program today is mainly focused on talking about Geelong investments. Sri Lankan community lives in Melbourne,
Yep.
as well as Sri Lankans living in overseas, especially Sri Lanka, who looking at doing property investments
Yep.
in Australia. We want to give them the information about why this great investment opportunity Geelong is going to, how this going to benefit to them as well.
Sure. I mean, hopefully I can give you and the viewers some insight as to Geelong as an area, which is certainly the last sort of 12 to 18 months is booming from a property market point of view, but also more on a smaller scale, obviously Armstrong Creek, which is where my estate's located, and then obviously a bit more detail about Worrelly itself.
Exactly. So the Geelong distance from Melbourne CBD is
So I have to travel to Melbourne every Tuesday. So
you take a train, take about 1 hour.
I drive, so it takes about, if I leave at 7, it takes about an hour, 15, hour and a half, depending on.
Great.
on
But
traffic.
been a lot of people daily traveling to Melbourne CBD for work, day-to-day
They
work.
are. Yeah, certainly the last sort of 18 months to 2 years, about 50% of our buyers are purchasers that are originally from outside the Geelong area,
Right.
and they've made the decision to commute. And one of the reasons, obviously, why they've chosen to move to Geelong, apart from the fact that land in Geelong, if you're comparing it to some of the growth corridors in Melbourne, is certainly more affordable, but from a lifestyle point of view. So there's some fantastic schools, fantastic beaches. Our estate, Worrelly, is about 10 minutes from Torquay, which, as everyone knows, is a world famous sort of beach seaside location. So a lot of people have made the decision to commute. The distance is not that far. I mean, the other thing from a lifestyle point of view is traffic's not too bad.
Exactly.
Schools are good, as I sort of said. The Geelong city centre and the town centre, I'm sure you'll show some videos as we go along
Yeah,
about what's
as we
happening.
go on, definitely. And Ben, now for our investors, the key important factors we are looking at for investment is the how, what are the developments happening in that area which will help the capital growth. If you do an investment in a couple of years time,
Definitely.
that's the key thing. So then they get advantage of the investment. I think all the tick boxes are ticking right exactly for that purpose. If you just go through that.
Population is probably the big thing. So Geelong traditionally was known as a manufacturing town. Okay. On one of the slides you'll see with the video, Geelong from an economy point of view is quite diverse these
Right.
days. So I think manufacturing makes up around about sort of 10-15%.
I mean that's after the shutdown of the.
Correct, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so with and there was a lot of notification in regards to Ford's closing, Alcoa as well. And we had a number of residents that live in our estate that actually work for those entities. A number of those people actually got quite significant payout, or redundancies. They were able to use that money to then do other things, and a lot of them obviously bought additional property.
Yeah.
But the big thing about Geelong is population growth. That's, as you would know, and as your viewers would probably know, one of the key drivers of property prices is supply and demand.
Exactly.
So if you've got a lot of people moving to a specific area and there is not enough housing, whether that's rental properties or houses to buy and obviously live in, well then prices would go up. So Geelong in the last 12 months, the capital growth was 15%. That was the highest level of any capital and regional city in Australia.
That is a fabulous news. 15% capital growth
Significant,
recorded.
yeah, especially when you're looking at some of the other areas which have tailed off a bit. The question then would be, fantastic last 12, 18, 24 months, why would the prices continue to keep bubbling along? Well, there's significant infrastructure expenditure that's still to come.
Exactly.
So WorkSafe, which once again you'll see in one of the videos, significant, I think it's well over $100 million, the construction of the building. There's NDIS, which is the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Right.
They've got a building that's under construction.
So the strategies, I think the government is trying to move the
Decentralisation.
decentralization, and that will generate more jobs, more families, more communities going into to
Correct,
Geelong.
yeah. It's to encourage people to obviously move to the regional cities, and there's a number of other regional cities in obviously Victoria where that is happening on a smaller scale. I mean, I think if you ask the government, originally obviously their intention, if the end result they'd be happy, is I think they'd be ecstatic.
Exactly.
Because there's a massive amount of people that are moving to Geelong. And I think people have, traditionally I think property prices in Geelong have been quite undervalued.
Right.
So we're now sort of getting to the point where I think we're where we should be. And then you go, well, why would it keep going up? Well, obviously there's a heap more infrastructure to come, but we're still significantly cheaper than a lot of the growth corridors.
Exactly.
So that obviously helps from an investment point of view, but also from an owner-occupier point of view. The more people that move to an area, prices continue to go
And
up.
that is a very important point, Ben, because if you are looking to do a property investment, you should go for areas where it's beginning to grow,
Yep.
and that is the beginning of that investment
yeah,
demand,
demand.
and that way you can get a maximum out of the investment.
Correct, yeah.
And this is a great opportunity for that as well. And given the growth and infrastructure the government is planning, but beyond that, it's I think more than 4 million tourists came to Geelong last year,
Correct, yeah.
and that is continuing to grow. It's a tourist hub.
It is now,
It's
yeah.
an attraction, and
Definitely. I mean, the waterfront, Geelong, once again, traditionally was a place you'd sort of go through to get to, say, the Great Ocean Road. But as you sort of said, there's a heap of sort of transient people coming to Geelong to enjoy the benefits there as well. It's more of a destination now, and the waterfront's probably the best example. 15, 20 years ago, that was very industrial. These days, it's a cosmopolitan, very sort of hip sort of cafe sort of environment. I mean, the other big thing about Geelong as a whole is the sort of health industry. So you've got the Epworth, which is obviously the brand new $100 million hospital that's just been constructed. You've got another 2 hospitals. One of the major employers in Geelong is Barwon Health. So that's a big part of the Geelong economy. And then you've got Deakin.
And that I just read before I left my office, 11,500 students enrolled Deakin University
Yep,
last year. That
correct.
shows how many, how much people coming in, their families, their parents, and people pouring into this city. And this is going to be a educational hub as well.
Well, yeah, and I mean, Deakin is a well-renowned sort of university. They've got a couple of campuses, but they're very pro investing into the community. They purchased quite a significant landmark building in the Geelong City Centre, which then they've tastefully sort of converted into student accommodation.
Exactly.
I mean, a lot of the students that are international students. They come over, they study. We had a client that purchased a block during the week. He originally was a student at Deakin, so he's from overseas.
Right.
He's just bought a block because he just loved the lifestyle.
Right.
So it's that type of thing. I mean,
And that student, it is another point I want to raise to viewers. That student may not be a resident or a permanent resident or a citizen, yet they can buy lands in Australia with FIRB approval.
Yeah,
and
so
this
it's
is
a
this
fair-
is another advantage. They
Yeah.
can buy a land, build a house,
Yeah.
and start their investment journey with this
Correct.
great approach.
And I mean, if you are looking at doing Foreign Investment Review Board, where our developers normally reasonably open to having a specific clause in the contract, if that's so wanted, which would give the prospective clients time to sort of go through that process. It is a reasonably sort of long process, as you sort of understand. But the end result, I mean, if you, and I've purchased within, I've got, I obviously live in a house in Geelong. I've purchased one investment property, and I've got another one hopefully I'll settle on shortly. The capital growth in the last 12 months has been outstanding.
Exactly.
But also the strength of the rental market. So you build a house, you get good growth, but you want to be confident that you're going to have a tenant
Exactly.
that's going to move in. And from all the rental departments I speak to, rental agencies, time of market varies, but for the most part it's between 1 to 2 weeks.
That is great.
Yeah, so I mean you can be confident. Build a house, you'll have a plentiful supply of tenants, because that's the thing, you've got a lot of people moving to Geelong. One of the first stops before they secure a property is, will they rent a house?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the key driver behind it, the economic diversification after the Ford shutdown, but a lot of government organizations, departments, and so many other private sector
Correct, yeah.
moved in and now
Yep.
creating internal economy there. so then you need properties for them
Yeah,
to
well,
stay.
well, definitely. I mean, a lot of the, certainly with WorkSafe, a lot of those, it was about 800 employees for WorkSafe. They were given some quite significant incentives
Exactly.
to move to Geelong. So that was no stamp duty, moving costs, agents fees, all of that sort of stuff. The entire workforce committed from moving from Melbourne to Geelong.
Exactly.
Uh,
And
yeah.
travel time is, you said, about 1 hour.
Well,
1
yeah,
hour
an hour and
15.
a half. I mean, I suppose the big thing, because you mentioned train, do I take the train? And I've done that occasionally. There's a significant amount of money that's going to be spent in the next couple of years about duplicating.
The railway tracks.
Correct, yeah. Which in the short term is not necessarily going to offer faster services, but what it will offer is more services. So ideally, during peak, train every 10 minutes. So that's a major benefit, because the thing about Armstrong Creek, the growth corridor, which is a little bit different to some of the larger growth corridors, is we've got two major train stations.
Right.
Within our location, we've got the Warmponds train station and the Marshall train station.
Right.
So it's not as though your prospective purchasers buy a property for an investment, that they're waiting for those specific things. They're already there,
Right.
but there is still significant infrastructure to come. You've got the town centre, you've got a $60 million high school, Catholic
Right.
high school, you've got a public high school moving to the area as well. So a lot of infrastructure's there or under construction, a lot more still to come.
Right. And Ben, other thing that I want to touch is the tourism
Yep.
will create short-term rental opportunities if you're
Definitely.
having a investment property, so you can furnished, you can go to Airbnb or various other
Yep.
internet booking sites
Definitely.
where to get short-term rentals.
Yep.
So when you get shorterm rentals, it's higher
You
returns.
would, yeah. I mean,
charge for the
definitely,
higher rent.
yeah, and especially over the summer period. I mean, the population in Torquay and obviously would sort of flow in Armstrong Creek swells quite significantly
Yeah.
during the summer time frame. Some of those, there's a number of different ways where potential investors can grow their wealth. It's a fantastic location. I mean, there's lots to see, but it's just a really nice location with a really good story about it.
Exactly.
And a lot of
And it is
memories.
multicultural
It
and,
is very diverse,
and
yeah,
diverse
yeah.
and it's a lifestyle location, I guess. So
It is, yeah, definitely.
and I think, Ben, we have talked a lot about the Geelong,
Yep.
and we have a nice video which shows all
Bit of a
about
snapshot,
snapshot
yep.
of what's Geelong and what is happening. And now we're going to look at that video, and you can see that video
Yep.
and see how the Geelong is coming up. And after that, we're going to go for a small break and come back. Let's look at that video
Sure.
about Geelong. Square Feet again. Ben, that was a great video. Thank you for providing
Nah, my
that
pleasure, sir. Thank
information
you.
to our viewers, and that gives a real understanding of how the Geelong is coming up.
Well, definitely, and a lot of that, I suppose the thing to note is that a lot of that information is based on 2017.
Right. So
So
there's a lot more have been.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of the items that were indicated that were imminent to start construction have started. NDIS, the Barn Water refurb's been done. There's a number of different things that are built. Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously, I'm sure the council will come up with an updated version. I'm more than happy to send it through, and you can obviously pass
No
it
worries.
through. to
And
clients.
Ben, there's a lot more good things to talk about Geelong. Let's talk about this. There was a discussion about Geelong Melbourne speed train, high speed rail
yes,
link,
yep.
and that is one of the key thing which will benefit in terms of investments.
Well, it is. And I read a really a good article recently in regards to the investment, and it's not necessarily Geelong as well. It's the regional high-speed rail link.
Rail
So
link, yeah.
I think the expectation is if and when that does come to fruition, instead of your hour and a half, you're looking at 20 to 30 minutes.
30 minutes, yeah.
Which would then mean that Geelong is no more a regional centre.
Exactly.
Really.
It's going to be like a metropolitan suburb.
Exactly, yeah. So if you're looking long term, and I always, and how I've done, I'm sure you do as well, is when you're looking at building wealth, you want to look long term. You want to be thinking 5, 10, 15 years time.
Exactly.
So if you buy and build a property and something like that comes to fruition, well, the benefits are massive. Like it's a game
price
changer.
will jump
It
up.
is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, and I think with the population, Geelong's population, one of the points was the population at the moment is 230,000. The council are aiming to grow that by an extra 100,000 people.
Exactly.
So going back to the point, supply and demand, you've got an extra 100,000 people, and maybe there's not enough houses. Well, obviously rents would then go up, but obviously the overall value of the properties as well.
So Ben, actually, we're not relying on one major thing to happen to grow the growth, but
It's a
so many
number.
things
Yeah,
happening
it's a
here.
great story.
So the speed rail link, duplicating lines, massive hospital, government
Yep.
moving their offices, private sector moving there, universities moving there. It is going to be definitely a game changer in terms of
You
investment.
do.
point
You've
of view.
also got Avalon Airport, and now
That
doing
is-
international flights with AirAsia.
So Avalon Airport is about 30 to 20 minutes distance, I
About
guess?
20 to 25
20
minutes
minutes,
from
exactly.
the Geelong City Centre. And the other thing about Avalon is Cotton On, which is our local company, and they're sort of obviously a massive sort of conglomerate. But obviously they're Geelong based. They have recently constructed quite a significant distribution facility in Avalon as well. So there's all of these different things that by themselves don't appear to be huge, but when you put the puzzle together, it is obviously reasonably obvious why property prices continue
Exactly.
to go up.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why, as long as the population growth continues to be at a nice, strong level, which the council are very pro that.
Yeah.
Infrastructure in Geelong is reasonable, and obviously there's a lot of money that's going to come through, obviously when the various elections come through, because Geelong is a marginal electorate, or the various sort of electorates are marginal for state.
So
and
let's
federal,
touch that on a little bit about investors. What a marginal electorate is.
Yeah.
Why, when you have when you're in a marginal electorate, both parties try to put more
do,
money and
yes.
get the more votes, which is good that you
Correct.
get the most development.
It is. So you've got the incumbent who wants to stay in their position,
Yeah.
and then you've obviously got the
Opposition.
opposition that obviously wants to take that person's seat, and generally that's where most of the election promises come.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why you'll find in the run up to whenever an election is, you'll find significant media exposure to the various parties promising certain things. Irrespective, I mean, I think a lot of parties are reasonably similar these days, but if you're in one of those areas, generally, once again, something nice is going to happen.
Okay.
And once again, if you've got property, something gets built, prices will naturally sort of go up as well. Yeah.
That's great. And Ben, now, if someone buying a property in Geelong as an investment, then
Yep.
the tenants moving, the lifestyle, the events,
Yep.
and public
of
attractions.
events, yep.
What are the main key
Well, yeah,
things?
so
here?
there's Paco Festa, which has been around for a number of years. They close off Pack in the Street. Very, very diverse sort of cultural event. A number of the Geelong community obviously come and visit that. You've got Cadell Evans, obviously bike ride. There's a number of different things in Geelong. Geelong have got
Sailing festival.
the sailing festival as well. Yep. I mean, generally, especially during summer, there's normally something happening. and a lot of that's down at the waterfront. Once again, it goes back to the council. They are very pro in pushing a number of those things. Yeah.
That gives the environment to enjoy your lifestyle.
They do, yeah.
And that's
Well,
going to
if you're
create a
ho-
demand as well.
Exactly. If you're at home with the kids and you sort of it's a nice day, well, there's always something that's happening. There's the Chocolaterie, which is just a bit further down from our estate, which is massive sort of a very popular business down in I think it's Brimley. So there's a number of different things that happen in Geelong. It's not sort of traditionally Geelong used to be called Sleepy Hollow.
Exactly.
I mean, obviously during winter you've got the Geelong Football Club,
Yes.
and that's the other thing. There's been
The footy has been a massive.
well, yeah. Fingers crossed tomorrow night. But the football club, that is another reason why. That obviously people go to the football, but they obviously spend money in the town, and that obviously sort of filters through to the community and the economy.
And on top of that, it's short distance to go to Torquay and then to the Great Ocean
Great
Road,
Ocean
Twila
Road,
Coasters. It
Apollo
is such
Bay,
a tourism attraction,
It is.
and that's going to give a lot of attraction to the Geelong
You've got
investment.
and you've also got the Ballarat Peninsula. There's a number of really nice wineries down there. Over the summer, you have got Mal's off to the side. Mal, what is the name? Adventure Park, which is a massive business these days. So it's a bit like Waterworld. Yep,
Okay.
it's a Ballarat Peninsula. Yep.
Yeah.
So that's obviously great for the kids as well.
And we have the ferry connecting between the
Correct.
peninsula,
Well, you do.
Sorrento
Correct, yeah.
ferry, and that's you can connect to the other side easily as well.
And
So
it's good you point that out, Sanjika, because there is currently a trial going on with a ferry running from Geelong, as in the port,
Right.
to the Docklands.
Wow.
So it's the same Paul Little, who's got a ferry that runs from Port Arlington to
Right.
the Docklands, which is obviously a permanent fixture. They're going through sort of a due diligence process.
Right.
So once again, something like that, it's just another mode of transport to get people to work in Melbourne. It's another reason why people would look to commute.
No,
Yeah.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. And Ben, we talk about what's coming in and what's being done, and I think we have another great video showing what's been recently
Yeah,
done
yep, definitely.
and how the lifestyle is moving in Geelong. And if you're investing in Geelong, maybe this one would be another
Exactly.
great video to have a
Yeah.
look at it. Let's look at the video, and we'll then go for a short break
Yeah.
and come back. Let's look at the video. Welcome back to Square Feet again. Ben, that was a great video showing up how the culture and how the events and the lifestyle moved in
Yeah,
Geelong.
I mean, it's revitalising Geelong is the sort of entity that created that. And it is true. Like there's a proper revival of Geelong.
Lots of
going
colourful
on.
events.
Yeah, lots of colourful events, lots of construction, and I think you highlighted a little while ago. I mean, our estate is quite diverse, but Geelong is a very diverse population, which is what you want. That's what you want, sort of a variety of different people, and that's the good thing about Geelong.
And Melbourne itself is the lots of food culture, and
Yep.
it's coming to
It
Geelong
is,
as
yeah.
well. You get to eat every cultures, every part of the world's
Yep.
foods in there. So
Yeah, it's very
those are the
foodie
things.
these days. Lots of sort of hip cafes, lots of restaurants. There's a really nice Korean place which is called Donko's. Like there's a heap of different sort of places. I'm sure there's a number of Sri Lankan
Restaurants as well, definitely.
So, I mean, that's the good thing about Geelong. As I said, it is diverse, and sort of getting ever more diverse, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now that we have talked about Geelong
Yep.
and what's happening and what are the events and how the lifestyle, now the most important part of the program coming, if someone wants to buy a land, where to go and
Yep.
what are the states and why we should coming to Wirral Estate, and can you give a rundown
Sure.
about the state and what is
Yep.
coming up, how it's moving?
Definitely. So the estate that I work at is, and our team is the Warrelly Estate. So where we are located, we're in Armstrong Creek. Yep. Now Armstrong Creek is the name of the new suburb, but it's also the name of the growth corridor. So what a growth corridor, if your listeners aren't aware of, is basically traditional sort of rural land, which is rezoned by a government,
Right.
which then it can be then subdivided. So our growth corridor, we were the first estate to start selling in June 2010.
Right.
Yep.
So that means the number of stages already completed, and
Yes.
you're not going into somewhere in the middle of nowhere. It's already been developed. Now
Correct.
still be done.
Yeah.
The upcoming stages
It's
coming.
one stage after another. So we've sold, I think, approximately about 3,150 lots so far,
Right.
out of about 5,500. So we're sort of closer to the end of the estate than the start. We've probably got another 3 to 4 years worth of land on current sales rates. When you, obviously, as you know, when you come down, there are a number of different estates within the growth corridor. So we're not alone. There's about 22,000 developable lots
Right.
in the growth corridor. And there's about sort of 5 or 6 major estates, of which we're one of. The good thing with those estates, and obviously ours, is because there's a significant population, but also a significant amount of infrastructure and houses and streetscape, you can very sort of straightforwardly, you can actually make a decision in regards to where you would like to invest quite easily, because you can obviously drive through our streets. You
Right.
can also drive through some of our competitors' streets as well.
Right.
And I would back in Warrelly's streetscape, Warrelly's community any day of the week. We're obviously the most established. Our developer, I think at last count, has won about 13 different awards
Right.
with regards to various sort of landscape, urban design, sustainable awards. Yep. So it's an award winning, and we're sort of going through the process, fingers crossed, of submitting for the UDIA Master Plan Community of the Year.
Right.
So I think we'll find out if we win that, fingers crossed, towards the end of the year. So we're sort of a award-winning estate, but our developer puts a lot of money and effort into developing the community. Because you can, as you sort of said, you can sell land, people can build houses, but unless the developer contributes to developing that community, sometimes you do have a little bit of, people aren't connected. So we do
Exactly.
quarterly markets. We've got a dedicated community hub
Right.
where all of our residents, whether they're owner-occupiers or tenants, they get access to mothers groups, play groups.
Right.
We have kids dance classes, all of these things.
It's creating an active community there.
Well, it is,
Exactly.
and that's the thing. It's not like just dump a heap of people in an area and just expect them to sort of create those things. You need to
Yeah.
facilitate that. So we've got a full-time community development officer.
Right.
The developer pays to facilitate those specific things. So that's I suppose the big thing about Warrell. It's about the community. It's about the environment. Our lot mix is very traditional. So what I
Right.
mean by that is a lot of the newer estates, you'll find, especially smaller estates, is they sell a lot of smaller lots, which are great from a price point of view. But if you've got a lot of smaller lots, you've got a lot of people, you've got a lot of cars, it's very dense, and sometimes that will then affect what the end streetscape looks like, but also what your end value is.
Right.
Because there's no point investing in an area if you're not going to get a strong return, but if you have to turn around and sell your property, you want to get the best possible return.
Right.
And then last in regards to obviously our estate, so there's recycled water, there's NBN and
NBN,
Opticon, depending
right.
on where you are with the estate. But it's very straightforward and a very easy process to secure land. So if you were to come in today, Sanjika, you could look at the available lots. The first step, it's super straightforward to secure a block of land, is put down a holding deposit. That's $1,000. That
Right.
takes your preferred lot off the market. And then we allow around about 1 to 2 weeks from that point to get everything else sort of organised. Yep.
Organize the contract, signing everything.
And,
yeah.
and allow you to do due diligence.
Mm.
So go and obviously have a chat to a builder, so yourself, so a professional in that industry. Get your conveyancer or solicitor review the documents. Speak to a banker or broker.
About the finding.
Yeah, to make sure that you can do what you can do within your budget. And then when you get to the point where, 1 to 2 weeks, this is obviously if you're inside. If you're, say, overseas, well, the time frame obviously is a bit more flexible from that
Yeah.
point. We would obviously go through a process where we would negotiate the overall balance deposit. You asked the question about 5%. Certainly developers on a case-by-case basis would look at that.
So we can sort of discuss that when the need
definitely.
comes.
I mean, our developer...
Otherwise, standard is 10%, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yep.
Developer Newland is our developer. They are very, very accommodating and flexible, and that's one of the reasons why we were the highest selling estate in the corridor by a significant margin. We sold 555 lots last financial year,
Right.
which is, I think the previous financial year we sold 380.
Yeah. And Ben, some of my customers from Dwellings Group, they have raised the question: are there any body corporation in the state? And some states do.
Yep, they do, yeah.
But this state, I'm sure there's no.
Yeah, no owners corporation. I mean, owners corporation can, it does serve a purpose, but certainly from an investor's point of view, I don't think it's going to add any value in reality.
Because it's a land. You're building your own house.
Correct, and you're paying a fee that's uncapped, which will go up because that owners corporation fee is geared towards maintaining those amenities that the local council won't,
Yeah.
but also covering public liability insurance.
Exactly.
If you've got an estate that's got good quality guidelines, so they set out what the streetscape and the timings have to look like, you've got a developer that is interested in making sure that if there's something that contravenes those guidelines, they do something about it. That's one of the reasons you drive through our estate. It's chalk and cheese between some of our competitors.
I think I'm sure that is one of the main reasons we were able to achieve 15% capital growth,
Correct,
right?
yeah.
Because the developer is passionate about it and they
do.
spending money about it.
Our development team, so the people that make the decisions in regards to how the land's going to be subdivided, what it's going to look like, what the parks are going to look like, they work upstairs in our sales centre.
Right.
So if someone was to come in, a resident, and they had a query or something that I wasn't, or our team were unable to assist with, we would just walk upstairs
And then
we'd
get the
speak to them.
answers.
They live locally, as opposed to some estates, the developer would very rarely even visit the estate. It's an afterthought, whereas we've still got another 3 to 4, 5 years worth of land. The onus is on the developer to make sure the end product, so the block of land and obviously the house, is as high a standard as possible.
Exactly.
So it's a benefit.
Great.
So, because I mean, in reality, if there's, as you know, there's nice areas and okay areas. You want to be within your budget. You want to be in the best possible area.
Exactly. And then let's talk about the schools
Yep.
coming into the state and
Correct.
other facilities. If someone living in the state,
Yep.
what are those things?
So there's a brand new school that's been opened started this year, which is
Now that is up and running.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a
right, okay.
public school. It's a school that covers a couple of specific groups. So it's integrated school that will look after about 400 mainstream kids,
Right.
and then there's a couple of hundred special needs kids. It's a school that is part funded by the state government, but also part funded by external groups like the YMCA.
Right.
So the reason why how that sort of model works is the education department get a really up-spec, substantial school, and then the YMCA, which is one of those groups, they then get access to those amenities after school hours. Yep.
Right.
So that's constructed. That is at the moment prep to grade 6. There is a local high school, which is Oberon High. They're being relocated to that same site, so they should be open hopefully 2020, 2021. So it's a
Right.
public high school within the estate, within Armstrong Creek. There's a $60 million Catholic high school,
Right.
which has just got funding. That's going to start construction 2020, 2021. There's another couple of Catholic primary schools which haven't started construction. There's another public primary school which has just started construction, which is the Armstrong West Primary School,
Right.
which is in the Mount Dunedin area. So heaps of
Educational schools.
Yeah, and I mean that's the other thing. I mean Geelong as a whole, you've got, I reckon,
I mean, Geelong have a good reputation
great schools.
about the great schools.
Public
yeah,
and
public,
private,
yes.
definitely, yeah.
The rankings are very
Right up
high
there,
in the
yeah.
right up on the
Yeah.
Melbourne. So obviously, the same guidelines, same principles
Yep.
follow through to those
Yep.
schools, so our residents and our investors will get to enjoy the benefit of that.
And that comes back to your the marginal electorate. Yep.
That's
so
exactly.
obviously
Everyone's trying to create more and more
government.
facilities.
And I mean, give it to the Labor government. They're very pro infrastructure. They're very pro education. There's obviously a major benefit. The other driver of that is population. So if you're investing in an area, you want there to be a significant amount of people, because obviously if there's a significant amount of people, a lot of the infrastructure items are sometimes there's triggers as to when they would be funded or constructed.
Right.
So if you're in an area where there's not a lot of people, you might be waiting a significant amount of time, because sometimes the infrastructure, if you go in a sales centre, it's proposed.
Right.
There's a big difference between proposed to funded to under construction to built.
Exactly.
Whereas you go to Warralilly, the vast majority of that infrastructure is, if it's not built, it's under construction.
It's not proposed.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a clear difference between we're going to a state with a proposed development
Yep.
project, so these are all
and you're
approved and
waiting and
undergoing.
waiting and waiting and waiting, and you're not going to get that capital growth if you're in an area that doesn't have that infrastructure.
Yeah.
And the good thing is, I mean, the major piece of infrastructure that's still not constructed, which is currently going through the council from a planning point of view, is the major town centre.
Right.
Yeah, so that.
What are the timelines for that?
Well, there's no specific timeline. I would hope that there would be some construction started in the next couple of years.
Right.
It is the land that's being developed is the same size as the Geelong City Centre.
Right.
There's about 1,000 medium density home sites that will be within that. Because of its scale, and there's a couple of developers, Welsh Developments is probably the lead one, so
Right.
Andrew Welsh.
Right.
They've got some signage up, they've been doing some soil tests. That town centre is has to cater for the 60,000 people that will live in the Armstrong Creek Growth Corridor. So that's 3 suburbs. So it's massive. So if you imagine, I mean, it's probably with our estate and a few of the other ones, probably about 10,000 people out there at the moment.
Right.
So if there's another 40,000 people to go into that area, well, that then obviously means that there's significant infrastructure still to come. So as you know, drivers of capital growth, infrastructure, population, and obviously strong employment.
Employment.
So in Geelong at the moment, I think the unemployment level is about 6%.
And if you look
It's
at
pretty
the childcare facilities, the daycare centres, childcare centres, that's also readily available in the
Yeah,
estate.
so there's one that's constructed within the estate, and there's another 2 that are under construction,
That's
just
great.
within our estate.
That's good.
Yeah. So if and that's the other thing is you go, right, well, build a house, get good capital growth. Why are the tenants going to move to the area? Why are they going to be interested in the specific person's property? Well, they might have kids.
That's it.
So they would be looking at schools. They'd be looking at early learning centres. That would be, and they work back from there. So if none of those things are there, well, then you're not necessarily going to get the amount of people that would be interested. I mean, the rent return is really good for a 4-bedroom home at the moment. Fairly standard sort of size lot. You're anywhere from $420 to $440 per week.
The rental income.
Rental income, yeah.
That's great.
Which is
Yeah.
really, really good. So.
So that's gonna. I mean, we've talked a lot information about the World Estate, beautiful state. I know I personally been there.
Yep.
It's a nice state, so I invite investors and customers and viewers to talk to us, and let's go for a drive and then talk. We'll meet Ben there and see how the state is moving along and coming up, and then we can see how the investment can be.
Well, there's heaps to see. I mean, it's not, you're not standing there looking at pretty marketing pictures and having to sort of imagine what it would look like.
Right.
It's all there. You can for your own, if you're obviously willing to allocate the time, and if you're really serious about building your wealth, hop in the car, obviously go down to the estate with yourself, and I don't think you will be unhappy with the end result.
That's great, Ben. And I think our time is running up today, but we have another great video
Yep.
about the World Estate. So we're gonna go to the video and then wrap up our program. Ben, thank you very much
My
and
pleasure.
coming along today all the way
Awesome.
from Geelong,
Yeah,
and you'll have a drive up to Geelong now
Yep, more than
and
happy to
enjoy
come up.
that. And look, if anyone wants to get more information about investing in Geelong, buying reserving a land in Geelong at World Estates and get more details, you can send us an email on info@dwellingsgroup.com.au or give us a call on 1300 314 310. We are more than happy to go through the process and get you all the information. And Ben, this is coming to the end of today's program, and we are going to look at this great little video about the World Estate, and we will come back again on another episode. Till then, thanks Ben, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Bye.
Thanks, mate. No worries.